stood in the doorway, the handle of the grocery bag cutting into my palm. I had bought strawberries, Mark's favorite. I wanted to surprise him with a cheesecake because he had been so stressed lately, but the apartment was too quiet. Not the peaceful kind of quiet, but the heavy, suffocating kind that comes right before a storm. "Mark?" I called out, my voice trembling slightly. He didn't answer. I walked into the bedroom and froze. The closet doors were thrown open and his black suitcase was on the bed. It was already half full. Mark was folding his gray suit, the one I had ironed for him just this morning. He didn't look up. He didn't look guilty. He looked annoyed, like I was an interruption to his schedule. "You're packing," I whispered, the bag of strawberries slipping from my hand and hitting the floor with a dull thud. "I am," he said, his voice flat. He finally looked at me, his eyes cold. "I was hoping to be gone before you got back." "Gone? For a business trip?" I asked, though my stomach was already twisting into knots. "No, Sarah, gone for good." I felt the blood drain from my face. I took a step forward, reaching for his arm. "What are you talking about?" "We just paid the rent yesterday." "We talked about looking for a bigger place next year." He pulled his arm away sharply. "You talked about that." I just nodded. 5 years, Mark? You're throwing away 5 years?" He sighed, tossing a stack of shirts into the case. "Look, Sarah, let's not make a scene. We both knew this was coming." "I didn't. I had no idea." My voice rose, cracking. "Is this because I asked you to help with the bills more?" "I told you I could pick up extra shifts." "It's not about the money," he interrupted, zipping the suitcase shut with a harsh sound. "It's about ... potential. You're a sweet girl, Sarah, you really are. But you're holding me back." "Holding you back?" I repeated, the words feeling like a slap. "I paid for your certification classes. I cooked your meals. I woke you up for interviews." "Exactly," he said, standing up and smoothing his shirt. "You're perfect for the struggling phase." "But I'm not struggling anymore, I'm rising. And frankly, you don't fit where I'm going." I stared at him, unable to breathe. "There's someone else, isn't there?" He hesitated, then shrugged. "Her name is Chloe. She's sophisticated. Her father owns the firm. She understands my world in a way you never could." "You're leaving me for a promotion," I said, the realization hitting me like a physical blow. "I'm leaving you for a future," he corrected. "You're happy with mediocrity, Sarah. I'm not." He grabbed the handle of his suitcase and brushed past me, walking into the living room. I followed him, my legs feeling heavy. "Mark, please," I begged, hating the desperation in my voice. "We can fix this." He stopped at the coffee table. He looked at me one last time, not with love, but with pity. Slowly, he reached for his left hand. He twisted the silver engagement band I had saved for 6 months to buy him. "I don't think I'll be needing this anymore," he said. He dropped the ring onto the glass surface of the coffee table. Clink. The sound echoed in the empty room. "Good luck with the rent," he said. Then he walked out the door and the lock clicked shut behind him. I stood there, staring at the ring, listening to the silence roar back into the room. My heartbreak turned into shock the very next day. I stood outside the glass doors of Henderson & Co., gripping the cold metal of Mark's apartment key. My palm was sweating. I told myself I was just here to be an adult, to hand over the key, maybe get a sorry, and leave with my dignity. I pushed the door open. The receptionist, who had seen me bring Mark lunch a dozen times, didn't look up. "I'm here to see Mark," I said, my voice shaking. "He's in a meeting," she replied robotically. "It's urgent." "I just need to give him back his." Laughter cut me off. It came from the hallway. I turned and the air left my lungs. Mark was walking toward the elevator. He wasn't in a meeting. He was with her. She was stunning in a way that screamed money. Silk blouse, perfect hair, heels that cost more than my rent. She had her hand on his forearm, possessive and comfortable. This wasn't new. "You don't touch someone like that on a first date, Mark," I shouted, the word tearing out of my throat before I could stop it. He froze. The smile vanished from his face instantly. The woman Chloe, it had to be her, looked at me with a bored expression, like I was a stain on the carpet. "Who is this?" she asked, her voice light and airy. Mark stepped in front of her, shielding her. "Nobody. Just someone I used to know." "Used to know?" "Used to know." I marched forward, the key digging into my hand. "I was your fiancé yesterday morning, Mark." Chloe laughed, a sharp, cruel sound. "Oh, this is the charity case? The one holding you back?" She looked me up and down. I see what you meant, babe. She really doesn't fit the aesthetic. I felt my face burn. Excuse me? Sarah, leave, Mark snapped. His voice was lower, dangerous. You're embarrassing yourself. I'm embarrassing myself? I held up the key. I came to give you this. I came to ask how you could do this to us. But I see now you didn't just leave yesterday. You've been with her for months, haven't you? Mark didn't deny it. He just checked his watch. I don't have time for this drama. We have a reservation. You're a coward, I spat out. Chloe sighed, checking her manicured nails. Mark, call security. She's bringing down the vibe. Security? Mark yelled, waving at the guard by the entrance. No need, I said, my voice trembling with rage. I'm leaving. Make sure she doesn't come back, Mark told the guard, not even looking at me. She's unstable. The guard grabbed my arm. Miss, let's go. Don't touch me. I jerked away and threw the key at Mark's feet. It clattered loudly on the marble floor. You forgot this. I turned and walked out. The automatic doors slid shut behind me, cutting off their laughter. Outside, the sky had turned gray and rain began to fall, mixing with the hot tears on my cheeks. I shivered, but not from the cold. I felt small, pathetic, discarded like trash. But as the rain soaked my cheap coat, something inside me snapped. I wiped my face. Unstable? No. Mediocre? Never again. I looked back at the towering glass building one last time. You want a future, Mark? I whispered to the rain. I'll show you a future. And you're going to regret the day you ever called me nobody. Insufficient funds. The red letters on the ATM screen burned into my retinas. I hit the button again, my fingers trembling uncontrollably. Come on, I whispered. 0. I pulled up the mobile app. Transfer to M. Reynolds $12,500. No, the word left my mouth like a gasp. I dialed his number immediately. It went straight to voicemail. Mark, I yelled into the phone, ignoring the people staring in the bank lobby. You took the joint savings? That was for a house. You can't just take it. His reply came as a text 5 minutes later. Consider it reimbursement for the 3 years I paid for your tuition and food. We're square now. Don't contact me again. Square, he had left me with $40 and a shattered life. 2 weeks later, I was dragging a suitcase with a broken wheel up 3 flights of stairs. The hallway smelled of mildew and stale smoke. This was the bad side of town, a place Mark used to lock his car doors when driving through. Now it was home. I reached for the lock of apartment 4B, but my hands were shaking so badly I dropped the key. It pinged against the railing and fell through the gap to the floor below. No, I sobbed. No, no, no. I sank onto the dirty step, burying my face in my knees. I felt the fight drain out of me. The sobbing started low and then took over my whole body. I was 26, alone and broke. Oi, quiet down. I looked up, startled. An elderly woman stood at the top of the landing, Mrs. Gable. She wore a faded floral housecoat and held a spatula like a weapon. She looked like she ate nails for breakfast. I'm sorry, I choked out, wiping my nose. I dropped my key. Dropped your key? She scoffed, stomping down the stairs. Sounds like you dropped alone with that racket. She peered at me over her glasses. You the new girl, Sarah? Yes, you got my deposit? I froze. The shame was hot on my face. I have half. My ex took the rest. I get paid Friday. Half? Her eyes narrowed. I don't run a shelter, girl. Full deposit or no keys? Please, I begged, looking up at her desperate eyes. I have nowhere else to go. I promise I'm good for it. She stared at me for a long moment. Then she sighed, a raspy, irritated sound. Get up. What? Get up. You look like you haven't eaten a vegetable in a month. Skin and bones. I'm not hungry, I lied. My stomach growled loudly, echoing in the stairwell. Liar, she grunted. Come inside, I made stew. But the deposit. Friday, she snapped. Don't make me chase you. Now get in here before the soup gets cold. I followed her into her apartment. It was cluttered but warm. She slammed a bowl down in front of me. Eat. Thank you, I whispered. Why are you helping me? I know a crash landing when I see one, she muttered. I've lost everything, I confessed, staring into the broth. I'm at rock bottom. Mrs. Gable leaned forward, her face stern. Good, she said firmly. Rock bottom is solid, girl. It's the best foundation to build on. Can't fall off the floor, can you? I looked at her. No, I guess not, exactly. Now eat. Order for ... Ashley? I called out, forcing a smile that felt like it was cracking my dry face. Sarah? I froze. My hands gripped the paper cup so hard I nearly crushed it. I looked up to see Ashley and Brittany, two girls who'd been bridesmaids in the wedding that never happened. They were dripping in designer raincoats, looking at my coffee-stained apron with absolute horror. Oh my God, Brittany whispered, leaning in over the counter. You work here? It's just for now, I muttered, sliding the cup across the laminate. Enjoy. We heard about Mark, Ashley said, her voice dripping with fake sympathy. She adjusted her diamond earrings. He's already with that heiress, isn't he? It must be so ... hard for you. Going from penthouses to pouring milk. And is that ... polyester? Brittany touched my apron with a grimace. I have a line, I said sharply, my cheeks burning. Next desk, please. They giggled and walked away, whispering loudly. I felt hot tears prick my eyes, but I blinked them back. Swallow the pride, Sarah. Pride doesn't pay the rent. Black coffee, no sugar, and hurry, I'm late. The voice was deep, impatient. I looked up. The man was tall, wearing a charcoal suit that cost more than my entire existence. He was typing furiously on his phone, his brow furrowed in concentration. That'll be $4, I said. He tapped his card without breaking his stride. Keep the change. He grabbed the cup and stormed out, the bell chiming aggressively. I sighed, wiping down the counter where he'd been standing. Then I saw it. A sleek black tablet. It was sitting right next to the napkin dispenser. Sir? I called out, but the door was already swinging shut. I grabbed the tablet. It looked expensive, vital. If he lost this, he'd probably come back and scream at me. Or worse, I'd get fired. I'm taking a 10. I yelled to my manager and bolted out the door. The rain was coming down in sheets. I saw his dark figure turning the corner 3 blocks down. I didn't think, I just ran. My sneakers splashed through deep puddles, soaking my socks instantly. Hey, sir. Wait. I caught up to him at a red light, gasping for air, my hair plastered to my face. I tapped his shoulder. He spun around, eyes narrowing. What? You ... I wheezed, holding out the device. You left this. He patted his empty briefcase, his eyes widening. He looked from the tablet to me, then down at my soaked apron and ruined shoes. You ran 3 blocks? He asked, his voice losing its sharp edge. It looked important, I said, wiping rain from my eyes. I didn't want someone to steal it. He took it, his fingers brushing mine. They were warm. This has the schematics for my entire company launch on it. I didn't even know it was gone. Well, have a nice day, I said, turning to leave. Wait, I stopped. He pulled a sleek metal case from his pocket and handed me a card. Liam Sterling. CEO, Sterling Tech. I'm looking for an assistant, he said, studying my face intensely. Someone with integrity. Someone who pays attention to detail. Do you have a name? Sarah? Call the number, Sarah. Don't make me wait. I walked back to the cafe, shivering. I stared at the card. Another powerful man. Another CEO. Mark was a CEO. Did I really want to walk back into that world? To be at the mercy of another man's ambition? I checked my bank balance on my phone. $42.18. Rent was due in 2 days. Mrs. Gable would kick me out if I missed another week. I couldn't go back to the shelter. I didn't hesitate anymore. I dialed the number, my heart pounding against my ribs. Hello, I said when he answered. This is Sarah. When do I start? Where is the Q3 projection? I needed it 5 minutes ago. Liam's voice boomed from his office, shattering the morning calm. I didn't flinch. I had spent 5 years anticipating the needs of a man who couldn't even remember his own mother's birthday. Handling a CEO was ironically easier than handling Mark. Mark expected me to read his mind. Liam just expected me to do my job. I walked into his office, placing a crisp holder on his desk. It's right here. I also highlighted the discrepancies in the marketing budget and flagged the vendor contracts that are up for renewal. Liam paused, his hand hovering over his keyboard. He looked up at me, his intense blue eyes narrowing slightly. You flagged the contracts? Yes, we were overpaying for server maintenance. I found a better rate. You found a better rate? He opened the folder, scanning the pages rapidly. I didn't ask you to do that. I know, but you needed it done. He looked at me for a second longer than necessary, then nodded. Good. Get me coffee. Black. Already on your desk, I pointed to the steaming mug sitting exactly where he liked it. Right. He cleared his throat, looking almost thrown off balance. Go. I walked back to my desk, feeling a strange sense of satisfaction. I was good at this. The obsessive organization I had developed to keep Mark's chaotic life afloat, managing his schedule, his laundry, his ego, was finally being used for something real. Don't get too comfortable, honey. I looked up. Jessica was leaning against the filing cabinet, her arms crossed. She was the senior associate, and she had made it very clear that she wanted the assistant role mostly because it meant proximity to Liam. Can I help you, Jessica? I asked, keeping my voice polite. Liam goes through assistants like he goes through ink cartridges, she sneered, flipping her hair. You're just the flavor of the month. Don't think you're special just because you can brew coffee. I'm actually reorganizing the digital archive, I said, turning back to my screen. So if you don't mind ... Oh, I'm sure you are, she smirked, dropping a stack of papers on my desk. Here, these are the invoices Liam needs signed. He needs them now. Now? He's on a call. He said now, she insisted, her eyes gleaming with malice. Don't make him wait. I frowned. It felt wrong, but she was senior to me. I grabbed the papers and knocked on Liam's door. Come in, he barked. I stepped inside. Sir, Jessica said you needed these signed immediately. Liam slammed his phone down. I am on a conference call with Tokyo, who interrupts a negotiation for... What is this? He snatched the papers. Invoices for office supplies? Are you kidding me? Jessica said. I don't care what Jessica said, he shouted, throwing the papers onto the desk. Use your brain, Sarah. Get out. I retreated, my face burning. I saw Jessica by the water cooler, suppressing a laugh. She'd set me up. I went back to my desk, my hands shaking. Mark would have fired me, I thought. He would have told me I was useless. But I wasn't useless. I was angry. I waited until 8 p.m. The office was empty except for the light in Liam's office. I knocked softly. What? He sighed, sounding exhausted. I walked in not with an apology but with a solution. I reorganized the filing system so that invoices are automatically flagged by priority, I said, placing a tablet on his desk. You won't be interrupted by low-level paperwork again. And I suggest you tell your senior associates that hazing the new assistant affects your bottom line. Liam looked up, surprised. He rubbed his temples, then looked at the tablet. You automated it? Yes. He leaned back in his chair, the anger gone from his face. Jessica told you to come in, didn't she? It doesn't matter, I said, standing tall. I should have known better. It won't happen again. He studied me, really looked at me for the first time. Most people would have cried or quit. I can't afford to quit, I said honestly. And I don't cry at work. Mark was a fool, he muttered, almost to himself. Excuse me? Nothing. He stood up and began packing his briefcase. You stayed late to fix a mistake that wasn't even yours. I stayed late to do my job. He stopped at the door and looked back. There was no arrogance in his eyes, just respect. Thank you, Sarah. Good night. Good night, Liam. I stood alone in the quiet office, listening to the hum of the city below. For the first time in months, I didn't feel like a victim. I felt valuable. And it had nothing to do with a ring on my finger. Sarah, the Tokyo team approved the budget deviation. They actually thanked us for the transparency. I looked up from my dual monitors and smiled at the junior analyst standing in my doorway. I told you, honesty works better than padding the numbers. Thanks to you, he grinned before heading out. I leaned back in my ergonomic chair, a far cry from the wobble stool at the cafe 6 months ago. Project manager. The title still felt fresh on my tongue. I had fought for it, earned it, and for the first time in my life, I felt secure. Pang. A notification slid onto the bottom corner of my screen. Subject, you are cordially invited. My heart skipped a beat. It was sent to my old personal email, the one I rarely checked anymore. Against my better judgment, I clicked it. The future Mr. and Mrs. Mark Reynolds invite you to celebrate their engagement. The attached photo was glossy and oversaturated. Mark, looking stiff in a tuxedo, and Chloe, beaming with a diamond the size of a grape on her finger. You look like you're about to be sick. I jumped. Liam was leaning against my doorframe, holding 2 coffees. He had started doing that lately, bringing me coffee instead of asking me to fetch it. I'm fine, I lied, reaching for the mouse to close the window. You're terrible at lying, he said, walking over and placing the cup on my coaster. His eyes flicked to the screen. He went still. Is that him? And her, I muttered. They're getting engaged. And they invited you? Liam's brow furrowed. That's either incredibly stupid or incredibly cruel. It's Chloe, I said, staring at her perfect smile. She wants to make sure I know I lost. She probably invited everyone from our old life just to see me sitting alone in the corner. So, are you going to give her the satisfaction of staying home? I looked at him. I can't go, Liam. It's this weekend. I don't have a dress, I don't have the energy, and I definitely don't have a date. You have a dress, he said, taking a sip of his coffee. You make enough now to buy whatever you want. And you have a date. I blinked. I do? Me, he said simply. I'm free this weekend. Liam, you're my boss. You can't go to my ex-fiancé's engagement party. I'm not going as your boss, he corrected, his voice soft but firm. I'm going as your friend. You supported me when I was losing my mind over the merger last month. Let me support you. People will talk, I warned. Let them, he shrugged. You spent your whole life worrying about what people think, Sarah. Mark made you feel small so he could feel big. Go to that party. Stand tall. Show him he didn't break you. I looked back at the photo. Mark's smile didn't reach his eyes. Mine would? Okay, I whispered. I'll go. Good, Liam nodded, turning to leave. Pick me up at 7 on Saturday. And Sarah? Yes? Don't wear beige. I laughed, a genuine sound that surprised me. Noted? That evening I stood in front of the mirror in a high-end boutique downtown. The sales associate had brought me a deep emerald gown. It was silk, floor-length, with a slit up the leg and a plunging back. It's very bold, the associate said hesitantly. I ran my hand down the fabric. Mark used to pick out my clothes. High necklines, Sarah, neutral colors. You don't want to draw attention. I looked at my reflection. My shoulders were pulled back. My eyes were bright. I didn't look like a victim anymore. Bold is exactly what I need, I said, handing her my credit card. I'll take it. The chandelier was blinding. The noise was deafening until we walked in. Liam offered his arm. Breathe, he whispered. You belong here. We stepped onto the marble floor. I felt hundreds of eyes on the emerald silk of my dress, but only one pair mattered, Mark. He was standing by the ice sculpture, holding a champagne flute. When he saw me, his hand went slack. The glass slipped, shattering against the floor with a sound like a gunshot. Mark, Chloe snapped, slapping his arm lightly but humiliatingly. Look what you did. Clean it up before Daddy sees. Mark blinked, looking from the broken glass to me. He looked gray, tired. His shoulders were slumped in that expensive tuxedo. I'll get a waiter, he stammered. Just do it yourself, babe, Chloe sneered, turning her back on him to wave at a friend. You're closer. I felt a strange twist in my gut. She was treating him exactly the way he used to treat me. Like an accessory, a nuisance. Liam Sterling? A booming voice cut through the tension. A large, imposing man in a velvet jacket marched toward us, Mr. Henderson, the owner of the firm. The man Mark was terrified of. Mr. Henderson, Liam said smoothly, extending a hand. Thank you for allowing me to crash the party. Nonsense. Henderson shook Liam's hand with both of his. Having the CEO of Sterling Tech at my daughter's engagement is an honor. We've been trying to get a meeting with your acquisitions team for months. Mark stepped forward, brushing glass from his shoe. Sir, I didn't know you knew. Not now, Mark, Henderson said without even looking at him. Go check on the catering. The shrimp tower is empty. Mark froze. But sir, I'm the groom. And you're on thin ice after last quarter's numbers, Henderson muttered, turning his back on Mark to smile at Liam. Who is this enchanting guest? This is Sarah, Liam said, placing a protective hand on the small of my back. My project manager. And the reason our last launch was a success. Project manager? Henderson raised an eyebrow. Beauty and brains, a rare combination. Mark, why aren't you moving? Mark flushed red and scurried away. I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. I need a drink, I whispered to Liam. I'll handle Henderson, he winked. Go. I walked to the buffet, my heels clicking confidently. I reached for a skewer and a hand grabbed my wrist. Sarah. I pulled back sharply. Mark was standing there, smelling of nervousness and stale alcohol. "Don't touch me," I said calmly. "You look ... double quotes." He swallowed hard, his eyes raking over the dress. "Incredible. You never dressed like this for me." "You never let me," I reminded him, picking up a napkin. "You liked me invisible. Remember?" "I was stressed," he said quickly, leaning in. "Sarah, she's a nightmare. She controls everything. The wedding, the house, my career. I can't even pick my own tie." "Sounds familiar," I said, taking a bite of the appetizer. "I made a mistake," he whispered, looking over his shoulder to make sure Chloe wasn't watching. "I miss talking to someone who actually listens. Who actually cares about me, not my job title." "You don't miss me, Mark," I said, meeting his eyes. "You miss having a cheerleader. You miss having someone to dump your garbage on while you climb the ladder." "That's not fair," he hissed. "And what are you doing with Sterling? You think he actually likes you? He's just using you to get to Henderson." I laughed. It was a light, genuine laugh that seemed to confuse him. "Liam doesn't need to use anyone, Mark. He's already won. And honestly, so have I." "You're just an assistant," he sneered, the old Mark surfacing. "Don't pretend you're in his league." "Project manager," I corrected him, stepping closer so he could see the fire in my eyes. "And unlike you, I earned my spot." "Mark," Chloe's shrill voice rang out from the dance floor. "Get over here. The photographer is waiting." He flinched. "Better run," I said coldly. "She's calling." He looked at me with pure hate, the hate of a man who knows he's been surpassed. Then he turned and walked back to his cage while I walked back to the man who treated me like an equal. They submitted their preliminary outline an hour ago. I picked it up, my hands still warm from my morning coffee. I thought the deadline was tomorrow. "Tell me what we're up against." I flipped open the cover page. Project, Skyline Connectivity. The name was generic, but the subtitle, Autonomous Node Distribution for Urban Centers, sent a cold shiver down my spine. "No," I whispered, flipping the page. "What is it?" "Huh, is it?" Liam asked, stepping into the room. I stared at the diagram on page 3. It was a hexagonal grid system overlaid on a city map. It wasn't just similar to an idea I had. It was identical. "He stole it," I said, my voice trembling not with sadness, but with pure white-hot rage. "Who?" "Mark," I snapped, slamming the document shut. 3 years ago, I spent my weekends sketching out a logistics model for smart cities. I filled an entire blue notebook with calculations, diagrams, everything. When he kicked me out, I left it in the knit-stand drawer. Liam's expression darkened. "You think he used your notebook?" "I don't think I know," I said, pointing at the page. "Look at this variable labeled X7. That's not industry standard. That was my placeholder because I couldn't figure out the bandwidth limit at the time. He didn't even bother to change the variable name. That son of a..." Liam trailed off, pacing the small room. "If he wins this contract with your work, it's over. We can sue, but it'll take months. The contract will be signed by then." "I don't want to sue," I said, standing up. The chair scraped loudly against the floor. "Then what do you want to do?" "I want to humiliate him." I walked over to the whiteboard and uncapped a red marker. "He stole the X7 model," I explained, drawing a hexagon. "But he stole the unfinished version. He doesn't know why I used that variable. He thinks it's a fixed point. And it's not?" Liam asked, watching me intently. "No, it's dynamic," I said, slashing a line through the shape. "If you run his model at full capacity, the latency will crash the whole system. He built a car with no engine." "So we let him pitch it," Liam realized, a slow smile spreading across his face. "And then we show the client why it won't work." "Exactly." "But we need something better," I said, turning to him. "I'm going to build a skyscraper on top of it." "It's 6 p.m., Sarah. That's an all-nighter." "I don't care." "Good," Liam said, pulling up a chair. "Because I'm staying too. What do you need?" "Coffee," I said, already typing furiously on my keyboard. "Strong. Done." For the next 12 hours, we were a machine. The office emptied out, the lights dimmed, but my monitor burned bright. "How about we integrate the cloud back up here?" Liam asked around 2 a.m., pointing to a line of code. "Too slow," I muttered, deleting a block of text. "Brilliant," he murmured. I looked at him. His tie was loosened, his sleeves rolled up. He wasn't looking at me like an assistant. He was looking at me like a partner. Mark thinks I was just a housewife in training, I said softly, watching the progress bar load on the screen. He thought my ideas were cute hobbies. He's going to learn the hard way, Liam said, handing me a fresh mug. You're not a hobby, Sarah. You're the whole damn industry. By sunrise, the new proposal was ready. It was sleeker, faster, and infinitely smarter than the stolen draft Mark had submitted. I printed the final copy, the pages warm in my hands. I felt tired, but beneath the exhaustion, there was steel. Let's go, I said, grabbing my blazer. I have a presentation to win. The woman walking into that boardroom was coming for blood. I could see the sheen on his forehead as he stood at the head of the long mahogany table. He clicked the remote and a slide flashed up on the screen. Seamless connectivity for the modern era. As you can see, Mark said, his voice booming with forced confidence. I sat next to Liam, my hands folded calmly in my lap. Mark was using words I had written in our old kitchen while he played video games. He was using my buzzwords, but he was delivering them with the depth of a shallow puddle. Impressive visuals, Mr. Vance, the lead investor for the city project, noted, tapping his pen. But I have a question about the load-bearing capacity of that X7 node. In a high-traffic surge, say, during a citywide emergency, how does your algorithm prevent a cascade failure? Mark froze. He blinked rapidly. A cascade failure? Yes, Vance pressed. If one node goes down, does the X7 isolate the crash, or does it redistribute the load? Because looking at your schematic, it seems static. Mark chuckled nervously, loosening his tie. Well, sir, the system is designed to be very robust. The X7 is... It's top of the line. We anticipate no failures. You anticipate no failures in a digital network? Vance raised an eyebrow. Backup generators, Mark stammered. I glanced at Liam. He gave me a barely perceptible nod. If I may, I said, my voice cutting through the awkward silence. Mark shot me a glare. Sarah, we're in the middle of... Actually, Vance interrupted, swiveling his chair toward me. Let her speak. You didn't answer the question. I stood up, not needing to look at the screen. I knew the schematic better than the back of my hand. I had invented it. In a surge, it wouldn't just fail. It would crash the entire grid within 40 seconds. Mark turned pale. That's a lie. She's just an assistant. I'm the project manager, I corrected him, plugging my laptop into the HDMI cable. And this is the finished model. The screen flickered, replacing Mark's static blue graph with my dynamic, pulsing gold web. We use a fluid redistribution algorithm. If one node fails, the traffic isn't blocked. It's instantly rerouted to the 3 nearest active nodes. It breathes. It adapts. Show me, Vance commanded, leaning forward. I typed a command. Simulating a 40% surge. The graph spiked, the lines glowing red, then immediately stabilizing as the gold web expanded. 0 latency, I said. Complete redundancy, no crashes. The room was silent. Then Vance let out a low whistle. That, Vance said, pointing at the screen, is brilliant. It's exactly what we need. It's theoretical? It's operational, Liam spoke up for the first time, his voice calm and deadly. We've been running the beta test on our internal servers for a week. It works. Mark looked at me. His eyes were wide, filled with a dawn of horrifying realization. He recognized the code. He recognized the logic. He finally understood that the housewife he left behind was the architect of his defeat. How? He mouthed at me. I finished the notebook, Mark, I whispered, so only he could hear. Gentlemen, Vance stood up, extending his hand toward Liam and me. I think we've seen enough. Sterling Tech, you have the contract. Thank you, sir, I said, shaking his hand firmly. I turned to gather my things. Mark was still standing at the head of the table, but he looked smaller than I had ever seen him. He was holding his remote like a lifeline, but the ship had already sunk. Sarah ... double quiz, he started. You can pack up your things, Mr. Reynolds, Vance said dismissively. We need the room for the real work. I walked out the door, Liam right beside me. I didn't look back, I didn't need to. The sound of Mark's briefcase snapping shut was the only closure I needed. Did you hear about the vase? I held the phone between my shoulder and ear, unlocking my apartment door. Hello to you too, Jenna. What vase? The Ming vase in the Henderson lobby, Jenna said, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. Chloe threw it at him. In front of the receptionist, the security guard, and 3 clients. I walked into my dark apartment and flipped the switch. She threw a vase at Mark? She missed him, unfortunately. It shattered against the wall. Apparently, her father threatened to fire Mark after the Skyline disaster. He told Mark he embarrassed the family name. Chloe went nuclear. She screamed that he was a fraud and a loser. I set my keys on the counter. Jenna, I really don't need to know this, but it's delicious, she insisted. Everyone is talking about it. Mark has been sleeping in his office because she locked him out of the townhouse. He looks like a ghost, Sarah, a really tired, unwashed ghost. It's not delicious, I said, surprised by my own reaction. It's just ... sad. Sad? After what he did to you? He ruined his own life, Jenna. I didn't have to lift a finger. That's not a victory lap. That's a funeral. You're too nice, she sighed. Anyway, I just thought you'd want to know. The kingdom is crumbling. I hung up and made myself a cup of chamomile tea. I needed calm. The adrenaline of the presentation had faded, leaving a hollow ache in my chest. I walked out onto the balcony, wrapping my cardigan tighter against the night air. My phone buzzed on the small metal table. I glanced at it. The name on the screen made my stomach turn. Mark, 11:42 p.m. I made a mistake. I stared at the words. A second text bubble appeared. She isn't you. She doesn't listen. She doesn't understand me. I'm sorry, Sarah. I should have never left. I took a sip of tea. The steam warmed my face, but I felt cold inside. A year ago, this text would have been my salvation. I would have read it and felt a rush of vindication, maybe even hope. Now, I just felt pity. He was reaching out to the version of me he remembered, the girl who would fix everything. But that girl didn't exist anymore. I didn't reply. I turned the phone face down. Knock, knock. I jumped, spinning around. Liam was standing in the open doorway of my balcony, holding a paper bag from my favorite bakery. I buzzed, but you didn't answer, he said, stepping into the cool night air. I used the spare key you gave me for the dog walker. I hope that's okay. It's fine, I breathed out, the tension leaving my shoulders. What are you doing here? We won a $20 million contract today, he said, placing the bag on the table. I didn't think you should be celebrating with just chamomile tea. I'm not really celebrating, I admitted, looking back out at the city lights. I'm thinking. About him? Liam asked. He gestured to my phone. I saw the screen light up. He texted me, I said quietly. He said she isn't me. Liam went still. He leaned against the railing, watching me closely. No, I said instantly. God, no, I just ... I feel heavy. I spent 5 years trying to be enough for him, and now that I am enough, I don't want the prize. That's because he's not a prize, Sarah, Liam said softly. He's a lesson. He moved closer, his presence warm and steady beside me. The air between us shifted. It wasn't the camaraderie of the war room anymore. It was quieter, deeper. You were incredible today, he said. Not just the code, the way you stood up. The way you commanded that room. I was terrified, I confessed, looking up at him. You didn't show it. He reached out, his fingers brushing a stray lock of hair behind my ear. His hand lingered there, his thumb tracing my cheekbone. My heart hammered against my ribs, but for the first time I didn't pull away. Liam, I whispered. I know, he said, his voice rough. I've been wanting to do this for months, but I know you're not there yet. I looked down at his tie slightly crooked from the long day. I'm scared, I admitted, the words catching in my throat. I trusted Mark with everything. My future, my secrets, my money. And he erased me in an afternoon. If I let you in, if I let myself feel this ... You think I'll hurt you, he finished. I think I might break if I have to do this again. Liam took my hand. He didn't pull me closer. He just held it, anchoring me. I'm not him, he said firmly. I don't want an assistant, Sarah, and I don't want a stepping stone. I want a partner. I looked into his eyes. They were clear and patient. I can't promise I'll be ready tomorrow, I said, my voice trembling. Then I'll wait, he replied, squeezing my hand. Take a week. Take a year. I'm not going anywhere. You're worth the wait. I looked at our joined hands. For the first time in a long time, the silence wasn't lonely. It was full of promise. Okay, I whispered. Okay. I was folding laundry, watching a sitcom I didn't really find funny when a heavy, chaotic pounding shook my front door. It wasn't the rhythmic knock of a delivery driver or the polite buzz Liam used. It was the sound of panic. I checked the peephole and recoiled. It was Mark, but it wasn't the Mark one knew. The Mark one knew was polished, manicured, and obsessed with appearances. This man was hunched over. His hair, usually gelled to perfection, was matted against his forehead. His shirt was untucked, and even through the fisheye lens, I could see the dark circles under his eyes. I debated pretending I wasn't home. But the pounding started again, louder this time. "Sarah, I know you're in there. Please." I unlocked the deadbolt and opened the door just wide enough to block the entrance with my body. The smell hit me first, stale scotch and rain. "What do you want, Mark?" "She kicked me out," he rasped, his eyes wild and bloodshot. He tried to push past me, but I didn't budge. "Chloe, she changed the locks. She told security to ban me from the building. I have nowhere to go, Sarah." "You have parents in Ohio," I said, keeping my hand on the doorframe. "Go there. I can't go back like this." He cried, running a hand through his messy hair. "I'm a laughingstock. Henderson fired me this morning. They escorted me out of the building with a cardboard box, me, after everything I gave them." "You gave them a stolen idea and a public relations nightmare," I pointed out. "I'm surprised it took this long." He flinched, leaning heavily against the door jamb. "I know, I messed up. I was desperate. The pressure... You don't understand the pressure she put on me." "I don't care," I said. It was the truth. I waited for the anger to bubble up, the rage I had felt when I saw him with Chloe, or when I found the stolen notebook. But there was nothing. Just a hollow, dull recognition that this stranger used to be my fiancé. "Sarah, please," he begged, his voice cracking. "We were partners," I corrected. "And you dissolved the partnership the minute you thought you found a better deal." He looked at me, his eyes filling with tears. He dropped to his knees, actually dropped to the dirty hallway floor. "I made a mistake," he sobbed. "I see that now. Chloe... she's cold. She's cruel. She isn't you. Remember the cabin? Remember how we talked about getting a golden retriever? We were soulmates, Sarah. You were the only one who ever really understood me." I watched him cry. It was a performance I had seen 1,000 times. Whenever he hurt me, whenever he forgot an anniversary or belittled my career, he would cry. He would use our memories as currency to buy forgiveness. "Get up, Mark," I said quietly. "Help me," he whispered, grabbing the hem of my jeans. "Talk to Sterling. He listens to you. He respects you, if he just put in a good word. Maybe he could find a spot for me. Consultant, analyst, anything. I just need a lifeline." I stared at his hand on my denim. That was it. That was the core of it. He didn't want me, he wanted my access. He wanted the security I had built for myself because he had burned his own down. "You want me to ask my boss, the man whose contract you tried to steal, to hire you? He loves you." Mark blurted out, scrambling to his feet, his eyes wide with desperation. "I see the way he looks at you. If you ask him, he won't say no. Do it for us, Sarah, for what we had." I stepped back, breaking his grip on me. "There is no us, Mark. There hasn't been since you put that ring on the table." "Don't be like this," he hissed, his face changed from sorrow to ugly anger in a split second. "You owe me. I supported you for years. I made you who you are." I looked him dead in the eye. The fear was gone. The hurt was gone. "You're right," I said. He blinked, hopeful. "I am?" "You made me who I am," I agreed. "If you hadn't left me, I would still be making new coffee and hiding my talent to keep your ego safe. I would be small. I would be miserable." I took a breath, feeling the cool night air rush into my lungs. "You didn't break me, Mark. You built me. But I don't owe you a thing." "Sarah, goodbye, Mark." I stepped back and slammed the door. I threw the deadbolt, click. I leaned my forehead against the wood, listening. I heard him swear, kick the wall once, and then the heavy trudge of his footsteps fading down the hall. I waited until the silence returned. Then I walked back to the living room, picked up my laundry basket, and unpaused my show. For the first time in 5 years, I was completely wonderfully free. The lights in the grand ballroom were gold, reflecting off the crystal glasses in a way that made the whole room shimmer. But the brightest thing in the room wasn't the chandelier. It was the sign projected onto the back wall behind the stage. Sterling Tech, Urban Solutions Division. Sarah Jenkins, Director. I stood by the entrance, smoothing the fabric of my tailored white suit. No more emerald revenge dresses. Tonight, I was wearing the color of a fresh start. "Stop picking at your hem," a raspy voice scolded. I looked down. Mrs. Gable was standing there. looking uncomfortable but proud in a Sunday hat that featured a very large, very stiff fabric flower. "I'm nervous, Mrs. G," I admitted, handing her a glass of sparkling cider. "There are 300 people here. Half of them are investors." "PFFT," she waved a dismissive hand. "You face down an empty bank account and a leaky roof. You can handle a few men in suits. Besides, you look expensive." I laughed, hugging her side. "You look pretty expensive yourself." "Don't get mushy," she grumbled, though she patted my arm. "Go on, your public awaits." I took a deep breath and stepped into the crowd. Immediately the noise swelled. Handshakes, congratulations, business cards being pressed into my palm. I moved through them with a grace I hadn't possessed a year ago. "Sarah! Over here!" I froze. The voice was high-pitched and overly familiar. Ashley and Brittany were waving frantically from near the bar. They were on the invite list, which meant they had talked their way past security. I walked over, my smile polite but guarded. "Oh my God," Ashley squealed, reaching for a hug I didn't return. "Look at you, director. We were just telling everyone we knew you back when." "Back when I was pouring your coffee?" I asked, keeping my voice light. Brittany flushed. "We were just surprised back then, but we always knew you had it in you." "We missed you, Sarah. The group isn't the same without you." I said. "I heard the group fell apart when Mark lost his expense account." They exchanged a guilty look. "Well," Ashley lowered her voice, leaning in. "We just wanted to say Mark is miserable. He's living in a studio in Ohio. Karma, right?" I looked at them. They were waiting for me to gloat, to be bitter. "It's not karma," I said calmly. "It's just life, and honestly, I don't really care." "You don't?" Brittany blinked. "No, I'm too busy building this." I gestured to the room. "Enjoy the drinks, ladies, but excuse me, I have work to do." I walked away before they could answer, leaving their gossip to die in the air. I felt lighter with every step. "Ladies and gentlemen, if I could have your attention." The room went silent. Liam was on the stage. He looked devastatingly handsome in a navy tuxedo, but it wasn't his looks that held my attention. It was his pride. "Tonight isn't just about a new division," Liam said, his voice echoing clearly. "It's about resilience. A year ago, this company was stagnant. Then I met someone who taught me that the best way to predict the future is to invent it. Please welcome the Director of Urban Solutions, Sarah Jenkins." The applause was thunderous. I walked up the stairs, my heart pounding a steady rhythm of triumph. I took the microphone. I looked out at the sea of faces. I saw Jason, my lead coder, giving me a thumbs up. I saw Mrs. Gable dabbing her eyes with a napkin. I saw Liam standing to the side, watching me with that intensity that always made my knees weak. "Thank you," I said, my voice steady. A year ago, I thought my life was over because a ring was taken off my finger. I defined myself by who I belonged to. I thought my value was in being a supporter, a background character in someone else's story. I paused, looking directly at the young women in the crowd. "But rock bottom is a funny thing," I continued. "It clears the debris. It shows you who is actually standing there with you. I didn't build this division alone. I built it with a team that values loyalty over ego. I built it with friends who became family." I turned to Liam. He smiled, a small private smile just for me. "And I built it," I finished, "because I finally realized that I am the protagonist of my own life. This isn't a comeback. This is an arrival, thank you." The applause roared back, louder this time. I walked off the stage and Liam was there to catch me. "You were perfect," he said, handing me a glass of champagne. I was honest, I corrected. "Sarah," he said, stepping closer, ignoring the investors waiting to talk to him. "It's been a year." "It has," I whispered. "You told me to wait until you were ready. Until you knew who you were without a shadow over you." He searched my eyes. "Do you know who you are now?" I looked at my reflection in the glass doors behind him. I didn't see a victim. I didn't see Mark's ex. I saw a director. A friend, a survivor. I looked back at Liam. The fear that had paralyzed me for months was gone. "I'm Sarah," I said, smiling. "And I think I'm finally ready to be just Sarah ... with you." He let out a breath he seemed to have been holding for months. He took my hand, intertwining our fingers. "It's nice to meet you, Sarah. It's nice to meet you too, Liam." We turned to face the room together, not as the CEO and his assistant, but as partners. And for the first time in my life, the future didn't look scary. It looked like gold. The bell above the door of the daily grind chimed, a sound that used to signal the start of my 8-hour shift of humiliation. Today, it just signaled that I wanted a cappuccino. I stepped inside, inhaling the scent of roasted beans and stale pastries. It smelled like memory. Then I saw her. She was sitting at the corner table, my old table. She was young, maybe 22, with mascara running down her cheeks in dark, jagged rivers. She was staring at her phone like it was a bomb that had just detonated. I didn't hesitate. I walked to the counter, paid for 2 coffees, and carried them over. "Is it a boy?" I asked, setting the steaming cup down in front of her. She jumped, looking up with wide, terrified eyes. "What?" "The tears," I said gently, pulling out the chair opposite her. "Is it a boy or a boss?" "A boy," she choked out, reaching for a napkin. He said he needed space. He said I was too much work." I smiled sadly. "Let me guess. You planned his schedule, remembered his mom's birthday, and made sure his socks matched?" She froze, the napkin halfway to her eyes. "How did you know?" "Because I sat in that exact chair a year ago and cried over a man who told me I was holding him back," I said, sliding the sugar dispenser toward her. "Drink. The sugar helps the shock." She took a shaky sip. "Does it ever stop hurting?" "I feel like my life is over." "It feels like that now," I admitted. "But it's not the end. It's an inciting incident. You have a choice right now. You can let this break you, or you can let it build you." "I don't feel like building anything," she whispered. "I feel empty." "Good," I said firmly. "Empty means you have room to fill it with things that actually matter. Things that belong to you, not him." I stood up, smoothing my blazer. "My name is Sarah. If you ever need a job that values too much work, call Sterling Tech. Ask for the Urban Solutions Division." She stared at me, clutching the cup like a lifeline. "Thank you, Sarah. I'm Emily." "Keep your head up, Emily. The view is better from there." I walked out of the shop, the cool autumn air hitting my face. I didn't feel sad for her. I felt excited. She was just starting her climb. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A message from Jenna. "He's gone. Moving trucks left an hour ago. Back to Ohio to work at his dad's hardware store. Rumor has it he's starting over from zero." I looked at the text. A year ago, the thought of Mark failing would have given me a vicious sense of satisfaction. Now, I just felt a mild, distant relief. He was going back to where he started. I was going somewhere I had never been. I typed back, "Good luck to him." Then I deleted the thread. I walked down to the Riverwalk. The sun was beginning to set, painting the water in strokes of violet and gold. Liam was leaning against the railing, looking out at the city skyline, the skyline we were helping to reshape. "You're late," he said without turning around, though I could hear the smile in his voice. "I got distracted," I said, coming up beside him. "I ran into a ghost." He turned then, his blue eyes searching my face. "Everything okay?" "Better than okay," I said. "I realized I'm not haunted anymore." "That's good," he said, pushing off the railing. "Because we have the London proposal to review and I need my director focused." "Slave driver," I teased. "It's 6 p.m. "I know. That's why I booked a table at that Italian place you like. We can review over pasta." "Strategy and carbs?" "You know the way to my heart." He laughed, a rich, warm sound that settled deep in my chest. He reached out his hand. "Shall I lead the way?" he asked, a playful glint in his eye. I looked at his hand. Then I looked at the path ahead. It was wide and open. "No," I said softly, taking his fingers and intertwining them with mine. "Walk with me." "Beside you?" "Beside me." "Always," he promised, squeezing my hand. We turned toward the sunset, walking in step. As the last light of the day faded, I closed my eyes for a second and sent a silent thought into the universe. "Thank you, Mark. Thank you for leaving. Thank you for the betrayal. Thank you for the pain. Because if you hadn't broken me down, I never would have found the pieces to build this life." I opened my eyes, looked at the man walking beside me, and smiled. I was finally beautifully myself.